Okay, I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to episode 5 of the Home and Energy Chats webinar series, our heat pumps right for my home. My name is Heather Chandler and I'm the owner and publisher of Green and Healthy Maine Homes. We have an exciting lineup tonight, so I'm so happy that you have joined us. I think you're going to get a lot out of tonight's program. So I'd like to start by sharing a special thank you to our sponsors, including our presenting sponsor for this year's Home and Energy Chats, Royal River Heat Pumps, specializing in the comfort and efficiency of your home. Royal River Heat Pumps offers the highest quality electric heat pump installation and service in Maine. Call for a no-cost site visit with one of their design experts or check them out online at royalriverheatpumps.com. I would also like to thank our season sponsors, Bath Savings, a local Maine bank that proudly invests in the people, places, and businesses that make Maine strong. Bath Savings, your neighbor, your bank. And Senecal Construction Services, now offering net zero ready design build packages conveniently located from just minutes from Portland, Freeport, and Brunswick. So thank you to all of our Home and Energy Chats sponsors. A quick overview of the evening. We're planning to begin the webinar with a presentation from each of our panelists, and then we will open it up to a discussion with Q&A. So please submit any questions you have for our panelists using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will try our best to get to all of them. We actually added 15 minutes to tonight's program because we were finding in the last few that we just weren't getting to all of the questions. So I'm hoping that that helps. And thank you to those of you who did submit questions ahead of time through the registration process. We did gather quite a few questions that way as well. And a reminder that the webinar will be recorded this evening and uploaded to our website, greenmainehomes.com, later this week. If you are unfamiliar with us, Green and Healthy Maine Homes is a multimedia brand dedicated to inspiring healthy, sustainable, energy smart, and future ready Maine homes through an online business directory, our biannual print magazines, monthly email newsletters, and an active social media presence on Facebook and Instagram. We share expert advice to inspire healthy, comfortable, affordable, efficient, and sustainable Maine homes. So please visit us at greenmainehomes.com to learn more. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists. I can't imagine a more expert group of experts than what we have for you tonight. So I hope you have your questions ready. Scott Libby is the owner of Royal River Heat Pumps, which he launched in 2013 to focus exclusively on the design and installation of heat pumps. He has an associate's degree in HVAC from Southern Maine Community College, 3 years of construction management at USM, and over 35 years of HVAC experience in the field. Royal River Heat Pumps is an award-winning contractor installing Mitsubishi electric heat pumps and state heat pump water heaters, and also providing service to customers within an hour radius of Freeport. Scott's integrity, social responsibility, love for the environment, and lifelong love of learning shines through in everything Royal River Heat Pumps does. So welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
I would also like to introduce Andy Meyer. He is a senior program manager at Efficiency Maine. His responsibilities include residential weatherization, heating systems, appliances, and lighting. He has inspected hundreds of homes, was certified by the Building Performance Institute as a building analyst, and is certified to handle heat pump refrigerant, and has a bachelor's degree from Bowdoin College. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
And last, we have Dana Fischer, who is a manager of utilities and electrification for Mitsubishi Electric Train US, monitoring and engaging with utility rebate programs and policymakers up and down the East Coast. He's been with Mitsubishi Electric for 4 years and was at Efficiency Maine for 7 years prior, helping to set up and operate the residential rebate and loan programs covering weatherization, conventional heating systems, solar, and cold climate heat pumps. Dana has also worn hats as a municipal finance director, a solar thermal entrepreneur, and a master brewer with an educational background in philosophy, sociology, business, and fermentation science. So welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here tonight.
I am excited to have you all with us this evening for what I know will be a very informative and timely presentation. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Scott to kick off our presentation this evening.
Great. Thank you very much, Heather. It's an honor to be here. So yeah, are heat pumps right for my home? I've been thinking about this question for a while, and it's kind of led me down the road of, is my home right for heat pumps? There are a lot of different ways to look at it and a lot of different strategies to use to address it. So, we can just jump right in with the next slide. So how do they work? We get a lot of questions on this very topic. So you have an indoor unit connected to an outdoor unit, or you could have multiple indoor units. They're using refrigerant to extract heat from the outside to bring it in, or in reverse for air conditioning, they're taking heat from your home and transferring it through the refrigerant cycle, very similar to how a refrigerator works or an air conditioner. They're fully electric. They're using no other fossil fuels other than what's on the other end of your electric lines. Hopefully you're using solar, or at least buying into community solar. Controls, efficiency, safety, we're not putting in carbon monoxide sensors. They improve your air quality and they dehumidify while they're air conditioning. And feel free to chime in with questions. We're going to get to those questions at the end, so be patient, and hopefully that question is still relevant. So yeah, Rain, thank you for going on to the next slide. So I always like to start whenever I go to somebody's home and they ask me where I want to start. I always ask, what are your goals? What are your objectives? How would you like to use heat pumps in your home? Are they going to be the primary source of heat? Maybe you just have some rooms that, they're the room above the garage and your primary heating source won't serve it. Or, we're just going to take a supplemental approach. Cooling never used to be much of a concern because we're in Maine, but now, instead of everybody going to their air-conditioned office, they're working at home. So there's been a big desire for air conditioning over the last, 16 or 18 months. A lot of it's driven by cost savings, or perhaps they're moving over to solar. The zoning's really nice where you can just have a constant comfort in each, space in your home. So really I think, designing a heating or cooling system is a very personal question, because it's not just a cookie cutter solution for each home. We never go in with the approach of, here's your menu-based pricing. You can pick from this because this is what we do. We really want to do some programming with you and, design a solution that's correct for you. So yeah, I think I've covered that slide. The types of systems that we can install. A lot of people just think they're the big white plastic thing that hangs on the wall. And of course, there are the big white plastic things that hang on the wall. They're not always white anymore. There are some really cool looking silver ones that surprisingly blend in with a lot of paint schemes now. There are black ones that look great above a TV. It kind of makes it look like you have this really nice surround sound system. There are ceiling recessed units that we can cut a hole in your ceiling, and everything that's in that wall unit, which is a coil, a fan, and a filter, is in any one of these other types of units that we can do, like a ceiling unit. It has a very similar coil and fan and filter. It just mounts in the ceiling. So that works well in spaces where, may have a lot of windows, or, it's that room up on the second floor that has those sloped ceilings that are part of the roof. So, those ceiling recessed units can be inserted there. There are floor units, also known as low wall units. They can fit in that same room on the second floor where you have the little knee wall along the side. Again, still not a lot of wall space. I always opt for the high wall unit, which, we mount it 7 or 8 feet above the floor. They're the most cost-effective unit to do. Just the unit itself in the box is less money than some of the other types, but then the labor associated with installing those work really well. They also don't compete with furniture placement. So if you go with a low wall unit, which is great in some applications, but we don't want to put that behind the dining room table. So now you need to blow across everybody's legs and feet trying to get it into the living room. So the wall units are nice in that aspect, because most everything in everybody's house above the belt is just wide open airspace. So those high wall units are able to reach the other side of the room without creating objectionable airflow. There are ducted units that are really getting popular, and the advances that the manufacturers have made have allowed us to, maybe go into a space where you had a big warm air oil furnace or gas furnace, and we can either just take the unit out and put a new heat pump in its place, kind of a different shaped box, but it still has the fan, the coil, and the filter. So it's working the same way. It's still connected to the same type of outdoor unit. It's just now delivering the air through the ductwork. We might even just do that in the basement below or in the attic above the master suite. So now we have one heat pump that can do the bedroom, the bathroom, and the walk-in closet, or maybe the other end of the house where you have the 2 kids' bedrooms and the bathroom in between. So rather than putting a wall unit or ductless unit in one of those spaces, we can do it with a ducted unit. You always want to consider airflow. It's kind of funny that I've been doing this since '85, and I've been kind of trained that if you are thinking about the work that we've done, something is probably not working right. You're in the past, it was because you were buying oil or buying propane or paying your natural gas bill. But for the most part, you should only think about your heating and cooling system when you're not comfortable. If you're comfortable and it's 70 degrees and everything's perfect, you just kind of take it for granted. So, airflow is a really big part of that. And any designer can help you figure out where the best placement is. So yeah, the next slide. So the wall units, and these are all Mitsubishi model numbers. So, most manufacturers make similar units. The one in the top left is Mitsubishi's new FS unit. That is kind of the workhorse that can be used with single zones. It's the type that goes down to, they refer to it as their hyperheat system. When that's connected to an outdoor unit in a single zone application, that can provide 100% efficiency down to like -5, 100% capacity, and still keep going down, -13, -20, they're still producing heat. The other units for the most part, we use those connected to multi-zones. So I could put an FS in one room, a GL in another room, slightly smaller. But then the EF units are what they refer to as their designer series, which comes in black, white, and silver. But all of these units, the bottom of them would be somewhere around 7 feet above the floor. But yeah, the next slide shows the ceiling units. The one on the right is the kind of original one that out of the box, it can blow in 4 directions. So I could put that in the middle of a, that bonus room above the garage. I could put that in the ceiling right above that, right above the sheetrock, right in the middle of the room. I can blow all 4 directions. The one on the left is the MLZ. That's the one-way ceiling unit. I might put that way at the end of that bonus room, like out above that window in the ceiling, and have it just blow in one direction back into the room. In most cases, we can do these in second floor applications as a retrofit, meaning you're already in your home and you already have sheetrock on the ceiling. These are pretty difficult to do on the first floor because we don't know what's above the units when we first walk in. There might be pipes, there might be wires. They require about 8 to 9 inches of free space above the sheetrock. So we try to steer clear of these when we're going into an existing home. With new construction, when everything's wide open and you can see everything, they work well. And yeah, so we can move to the next slide, which will be other indoor units, like the floor unit on the left. It's about 24 inches tall, about 30 inches wide. And, they tuck nicely down, in that knee wall space, or if your windowsills are a little higher than average, they can fit right in. So the bottom of that can be sitting right on the floor, or the bottom of it can be just above your baseboard if you have some really nice baseboard trim that you don't want us to cut out of the way. They're a very nice unit. And when any of these units, like the ducted one on the right, when any of these indoor units is connected to a multi-zone outdoor unit, the efficiency is driven by the outdoor unit. So if you have an outdoor unit that is, a hyperheat unit made by Mitsubishi, that unit's going to work right down in the lowest of temperatures we have in Maine. There are also some that, they work pretty well down to about 20 degrees. So when any of these units are connected to a multi-zone, the outdoor unit's going to dictate the efficiency. And they can be mixed and matched. So we might go in with a multi-zone and do any one of the high wall units. We might do a ceiling unit, a floor unit, or a ducted unit like the one on the right, all connected to that same outdoor unit. So you're not just attached to one unit. And yeah, the next slide. Budget. That's always a big concern with 99% of the people. That's one of the reasons why we like to go into the high wall units, because it's the most economic thing to do. The cost of the unit is, kind of the baseline. The installation is often easier, and then scaling kind of right up through floor units and then ceiling units, and then the ducted units are usually the most expensive installation, but they can also be economical in that we don't need as many indoor units. So really, you want to find a contractor that is knowledgeable and that you trust. And there are always loans from Efficiency Maine that I think Andy will go into, as well as the rebates. But a good contractor will help guide you through all of those steps. There are some mindsets about getting 3 bids. Sometimes they say to throw away the lowest one and the highest one. But really, the important thing is to find someone that you feel comfortable with, someone that has a good reputation, and someone that you can trust, because the relationship you're going to have goes beyond day one. Day one is the most important day in the life of your heat pump system, but it's not the only day. You need to have someone that's going to be there for maintenance, preventative maintenance, to make your system last, but also if you have a problem. So yeah, you can call Royal River Heat Pumps. Oh, that's the next slide. Or you can find a vendor on Efficiency Maine's list, or most of the manufacturers have a vendor locator. But you can certainly get started by calling Royal River Heat Pumps at 400-4065.
Thank you, Scott. That was a great introduction. And at this point, I'm going to open it up to Andy Meyer, who's going to tell us a little bit about the rebates that Scott mentioned and financing resources, as well as a little bit about Efficiency Maine's network of independent installers. So take it away, Andy.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thanks, Scott, for the introduction. Rain, could we have the next slide? Okay, just one slide on who Efficiency Maine is, in case you didn't know. We run the state's energy efficiency programs for across the state for all fuels. And we have 4 offerings relevant to heat pumps that I'm going to go over one slide each: rebates, financing, technical information, and a database of independent installers. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, there are a lot of numbers on here. I'm not expecting you to remember them. But I think the key numbers here is for low-income homes, we offer rebates up to $2,400. And for everybody else, we offer rebates up to $1,200. And we do have rebates for businesses, and a very generous one for small businesses specifically. All this information is on efficiencymaine.com, and all of the residential registered vendors you talk with are familiar with their programs. So, and one other thing, when I say rebate, it's a check that you get in the mail. It's not a tax credit or a tax deduction or anything like that. It's money, a check that comes in the mail, you take it down to the bank. And we love to pay rebates. So I hope if anyone's putting in a heat pump, they hire a residential registered vendor, and they put in one that's efficient enough to qualify for a rebate. That's all I'm going to cover on heat pump rebates. And Rain, let's go for the next slide. The loans that we offer 5 different types. The key thing is we will offer loans up to $15,000. The annual percentage rate varies from 4.99% to 5.99%. And we're not actually in this for the loan business. We're in this to inspire people, make it easy for people to put in heat pumps and save money. So a 10-year loan with a 4.99% APR, a $10,000 loan would be $106 a month. So it's a good rule of thumb if you're trying to figure out how much you would have to pay for heat pump. And you should, if you have oil heat now, picture cutting that bill in half. If you're paying for propane, you could picture cutting your propane bill by 2/3 and only having to pay 1/3 as much. So it's very possible that you could switch to a heat pump and have the whole thing paid for by energy savings. So if you can get a loan somewhere else, you can go ahead and do that. We just want to try and, for people who don't have access to enough money to buy a heat pump, we're happy to lend the difference between the cost of the unit and the rebate. So you should be able to do it with, as they say, no money down. That's the end of my talk on loans. Thanks, Rain. We have a ton of information available for homeowners. We've rebated 70,000 heat pumps. It's the #1 most popular heating system in our programs, and they're throughout Maine. Big houses, small houses, northern Maine. Actually, the heat pumps their popularity started in Aroostook County, but we rebated them all the way from Fort Kent to York. And we've got tools to help people all the way from the beginning stages of what is a heat pump. Remember, we don't sell them, we just promote them if they're efficient. We have information on savings calculator. How much would you save? I just told you, cut your oil bill in half, cut your propane bill by 2/3. You can look at our calculator. You can put in your price of propane, or what you pay for oil. You can adjust the calculator so it matches your house, and you can figure out you can estimate how much you would save in your house. So that's a nice tool. There are a number of myths shared about heat pumps. They are very unusual. To have a heating system that air conditions is bizarre. There's no other heating system that does that. To have a heating system that's over 100% efficient is really odd. There's no other heating system that can't be, a combustion system can't be more than 100%. The heat pumps that we rebate can be 300 or 400% efficient. That's why we like them at Efficiency Maine. So the myths and facts are helpful. People have heard things. Installation considerations, I agree with Scott completely. A good installer would be a great person to turn to and help you pick the right product and put it in the right place. But we've got a number of installation considerations where we've rebated tens of thousands of these. We've had feedback from homeowners. We survey thousands of homeowners. And if there's things that we hear people say, I wish I'd known such and such, we put it on our website under installation consideration. So if you want to go through a real detailed process, you can go to our website. You can also just call an installer and they'll step you through it. We've got case studies. And the last thing I've got listed here is user tips. Heat pumps are really different for us than other things that we rebate. If you put in an LED light bulb, you're going to save electricity. There's no way to avoid it. They use a lot less electricity and they make light the same way. Heat pumps, actually, the way you use it impacts how much money you'll save. And so we have tips. We want you to save money. That's the business we're in. So we have tips as to how to use your heat pump most efficiently and save the most money. So those are all available on efficiencymaine.com and hope that you'll go and investigate them. So we've gone over rebates, we've gone over loans. This is heat pump information. And the next slide we'll talk about is a special resource. Thank you, Rain. We've got over 500 independent, certified, and insured heat pump installers in Maine, and they are all good. We, as I said, we inspect thousands of them each year. We survey our customers, our rebate recipients. We ask them on a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate your overall experience of getting heat pump installed? And as of last week, 93% of Maine homeowners ranked their experience a 9 or 10 on a scale of 0 to 10. So we've got great installers. I like what Scott had to say. It's not a matter of are the installers good, but are they nearby, and how will they work for you? Maybe different installers are a best fit for different homeowners. So we've got a list of questions to ask when you're selecting a vendor to try and find which vendor is the best fit for you. If you decide to check references, we've got a list of questions that you might consider asking references. So it could be a more meaningful discussion. And we do recommend that customers get at least 3 quotes, as I'm agreeing with Scott. It's nice to, you'll feel more comfortable with your decision if you're better informed, and talking with multiple installers, though it takes time, can lead to the best confidence in your decision. So the heat pump installer locator is also on efficiencymaine.com. So I told you I'd talk about rebates, loans, technical information, and our database of heat pump installers. And I have. So look at the next slide is the last one. That list, by the way, I have to give credit because he's on the line. Dana Fischer started this program and trained me in many ways. And that's a list he came up with. Thank you, Dana. I'm still using that because I'm not good at counting very high numbers, but 4 I can remember. So our website, if you missed it, is efficiencymaine.com. And our toll-free number is right here on the slide, 866-376-2463. That's the same as 866-ES Maine, like Energy Savings Maine. And those are the 4 things I'd said I'd cover. Heather, thanks for letting me participate. And I look forward to Dana's talk and the Q&A.
Thank you, Andy. That was great. And it already gave me some questions for the Q&A. I definitely want to go into what some of those big user tips are, and then also dive a little bit more into the loan programs and just really how that makes it accessible for folks. So we can circle back around to that. But at this point, I do want to introduce Dana Fischer, who's going to talk a little bit about national trends and environmental impact information. So take it away, Dana.
Great, thanks so much, Heather. Before we get started, I just want to share how excited I am to be on this call and to be part of heat pumps and what's happening in Maine. We have so much to be grateful for in Maine. The beautiful weather and just the space that we live in and the people, just so many wonderful things. But here again, we have more things to be grateful for. We have an incredible array of fantastic professionals like Scott, who are helping homeowners out every single day. And we can be incredibly grateful for the very hard work that's being done at Efficiency Maine to promote best options for consumers and folks like Andy who have completely dedicated themselves and their livelihoods to bettering people's lives and providing these incentives and loan programs to make people's lives better and the cost of doing these things lower. So just again, I'm so grateful, and I think we're all very, very fortunate in this state. And for real, let there be no question, more heat pumps per capita are being installed in Maine than any other part of the country. It's absolutely on fire in Maine, and we have, we have the best contractors and best resources for it, and we have the most experience knowing that heat pumps can do the work. There are people in Aroostook County who use heat pumps exclusively to heat their homes and have for several years and use no fossil fuels whatsoever. It can be done with appropriate sizing. And so you may decide that you want to have some backup heat, and that's absolutely cool. If you want to have a wood stove or a propane fired, whatever, that's good. But just understand that we can make it happen with heat pumps. So what I've got is a handful of slides just kind of covering over some of the broader trends that we're seeing, specifically around carbon and the kind of changes we're doing here in Maine. So first slide, please, Rain. Right. So one of the big catchphrases people are talking about climate change and all the big things that are happening, like getting a dozen inches of rain in Texas or Louisiana almost on a weekly basis, it seems, and fires, that sort of thing. So one of the steps that's being taken by a number of different states and countries is to decarbonize, as much as they possibly can. And so a number of states, including in Maine, have made some policy objectives to reduce the amount of carbon that's emitted from our homes and businesses and cars and everything else along those lines. Next slide, please. And so there's four key ways of reducing the amount of carbon. One step is to put in higher efficiency equipment that lowers the amount of energy usage, particularly those that are tied to carbon. So you use lower carbon sources, like wood or biofuels, where you need to use fossil fuel or, use something to burn something, you need to, use lower carbon fuels. Another option is electrification, which is basically using electric devices anywhere possible and increasing the amount of renewable sources of electricity that are used on the grid. Now, I want to point out that, of all the states in the country, the amount of electricity, the amount of carbon that is generated from making electricity is lower in Maine than in every other state except Vermont. We have one of the cleanest grids in the entire country. And so, and we'll see this in the coming slide, but like, it is a really big deal for us where we have normal heating systems using significantly propane and oil that are relatively carbon intensive. When we switch over to heat pumps, we're making a big change in our carbon footprint in our homes. And so it's really an incredibly powerful step that we can all take to reduce our impact on the climate. Next slide, please. And whether you're talking about Maine, who's in the process of their triennial plan, or other states around the region, Massachusetts, New York, New Hampshire, all increasing spending on rebate programs and their uptake really around electricity. The rebate incentives in New York are absolutely staggering right now, and the amount of money that's being budgeted, hundreds of millions of dollars per year towards electrifying their building stock. And so a lot of these states look around and they see the activity that's going on in Maine, and they're trying to replicate it. They're trying to figure out what the secret sauce is and how to administer programs and make heat pumps happen for their citizens. And so, it's like, if you're sitting there saying, well, geez, what do we really know about heat pumps? We know a lot. We really have figured out how to make it happen. And we, like I said earlier, we just have an incredible array of very, very talented and dedicated heat pump installers. Next slide. And the market's growing. We started out with a couple hundred heat pump installers, and now we're well over 500. And those companies like Scott's have grown tremendously, over the years. Scott started his company, as he mentioned, in 2013 with him and a truck, and it's quickly grew to 2 or 3 people, and now Scott's well over 50 people, probably 60 if I'm not mistaken. And he's anxious to get more trucks, and yeah, making payroll is tricky business. So, but we anticipate that not just in Maine, but all across the region, there's going to just continue to be tremendous growth in this industry and a need for more and more installers. We also in Maine happen to have a large number of technicians that support the fossil fuel industry. And so I imagine a fair number of them are going to figure out that the path forward is really around refrigeration. Next slide, please. So as I kind of hinted to, look at this graph of all the states in the country. When you look at this, you can see that the darker color is a higher level of carbon dioxide emission per home. And that's really driven by the fact that the New England states consume a significant portion of oil per capita for heating, and propane too. Propane is, people often think about propane and think, oh my gosh, it's a more efficient or something like this. Well, it has a lot less punch to it. And so you need to use a lot more of it, and it ends up being more expensive, and it pollutes almost as significantly as oil, to be honest. And so switching to heat pumps can make a dramatic difference in the footprint all across Maine and also New England. Next slide, please. So I lifted, you can see on the left-hand side, I lifted the compare home heating cost calculator, which both Andy and I are big fans of, that anybody can go to on the Efficiency Men website to look at the costs of different heating systems, all different kinds of heating systems and different heating fuels. If these numbers are updated to reflect current costs of commodities, but you can adjust any of the factors for the cost of fuels or the efficiency of the different systems based on what you may have in your existing home, and then compare that to the cost of having a heat pump. And consistently, you'll find that heating your home with heat pump is lower in cost than just about any other option. But I took the extra step on the right-hand side to basically convert that into a footprint of oil, so a footprint of carbon. So if you look at each one of these different categories where I've highlighted it in yellow, those all represent an equivalent amount of heat to 824 gallons of oil burned in a conventional oil boiler. And so you can see less than 3,000 pounds of CO2 per year from heat pumps, but more than 4 to 5 to 6 times that amount from most other fuel sources. So it's really a dramatic change that can be taking place. And if you do put solar on your home or get involved with community solar or some other renewable activity along those lines, your carbon isn't 3,000 pounds, it's 0. So, I mean, like, you can really make a huge, huge difference. And, we oftentimes think, well, what difference does it make if I make that change? It's the only difference that can be made. We can't do it without individuals taking these steps and making these changes. And of course, little sidebar, you're going to be more comfortable. The system's going to pay for itself, and you'll be saving the environment at the same time. I absolutely want to encourage people to make sure they're taking steps to appropriately weatherize and look at the different options on air sealing for their homes to lower their heating load, and consider that in conjunction with heat pumps. Green and healthy homes is about making sure that we have homes that have good indoor air quality, that we've got good control of moisture in our attics and our basements. All these sorts of things should be on our mind when we're approaching it. But heat pumps, regardless of whether you live in a really tight, super insulated home or in a leaky old farmhouse, heat pumps can do the job. It's just a matter of selecting the right equipment to maintain that load. Next slide, please. Is that the end, Rain? Did I get to the end? Okay, so just to kind of like, hit it home before we get to questions. which I'm really excited about. You know, what do you need to do to make this happen? What do you need to do to make yourself more comfortable in your home? Really, you need to commit to putting a heat pump in your home. You know, you don't have to go whole hog and put 1 million heat pumps in your house and fill the whole thing. You can start with one. Andy started with one, and now he's got several. But you know, everybody takes it in their own pace. And so the most important thing is, whether it's this season, next season, or a year from now, commit to getting a heat pump in your home. And then check out all the resources at Efficiency Maine and look for a vendor and talk to different people and find somebody that's in your area that you get along with, you know, that you can build a relationship with. And the third point here, I know that we're going to talk about this more, but I really want to emphasize it. The Efficiency Maine loans, it's no money down, and it's a very reasonable interest rate, and it translates to $11 per thousand that you borrow. So whatever, you know, it's a little bit less than that, but I mean, like, whatever amount that you end up putting into your project, minus your rebate, you could finance it, and it becomes very, very affordable. You can make it happen right away. And, you know, if you want to pay it off in advance at any point in time, there's absolutely no penalty to do that. Sure, there is other financing available, but this is a very, very easy to apply for, very easy approval, and just a great way to just dive right into heat pumps. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions. Thank you again so much for the opportunity to be here today and be a part of this fantastic group.
Thank you, Dana. That was great. Very inspiring and exciting to hear how well Maine is doing with the numbers of heat pumps installed and how clean our electricity generation is. I knew that we were doing well in that arena, but second cleanest in the country is pretty incredible. So thank you for sharing those statistics. So many things to follow up with. I thought it might be helpful. We shared a lot of really great information here. So I wondered if somebody would like to bring it back to basics and just summarize what you think are the top 2 or 3 reasons that someone might want to consider a heat pump. Anyone want to take that?
I'm trying to raise my hand with my silhouette
Go
on.
for it.
Well, again, we rebated 70,000. So people are putting these in faster than any other heating system. And we hear a range of reasons, but some of the most common reasons are people want to save money. And we just shared that you can cut your heating bill in half or by 2/3. Another common reason that we hear is people are looking to be comfortable. And Scott mentioned with the pandemic, people are home more than they were. We've had some hot summers. They're going to get hotter, I fear. So people who've never had air conditioning like us kind of laughed at air conditioning. We don't laugh about air conditioning anymore. So you'd be generally more comfortable in the winter time because you can zone by each room. So you can have each room exactly what you want, but then having air conditioning and dehumidification. You can set heat pumps to be dehumidifiers. Just press a button on the remote control and it becomes a dehumidifier. So saving money and being more comfortable are some of the things. There are many other reasons, but I'll let the other guys talk to those.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, one thing we see a lot, Heather, is, you know, people's aging heating systems. You know, they need to spend money on something, you know, and they can either replace their oil boiler or propane furnace, or, you know, maybe even just simply do one heat pump in the main living space and take some of the burden off that existing system. So you'll burn less fossil fuels, but also maybe extend the life of that a little bit. And chances are, by the time, you know, most heat pumps, the best return on investment is like a single zone in that main living space. There's usually a payback of, you know, 2 or 3 heating seasons. You know, so it's a great investment.
Really, I know that a couple of you have mentioned the loan programs, and my understanding is that with some of the loan programs, the amount that you're saving from implementing the improvement and adding a heat pump is going to offset. So it's pretty much a cash neutral situation when you have, you know, you factor in your $11 a month per thousand and what you're saving in your your energy costs otherwise, that $10,000 or $15,000 figure isn't as scary anymore.
Yeah, like just a prime example of this, kind of going off of what Scott was talking about. I mean, like if you went and you installed like, an 18,000 BTU, which is, one of our FS systems, that'll put out like 23,000 BTUs at 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's say that it was, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000, and you were able to get an $800 incentive from Efficiency Maine, and you brought the total the out-of-pocket cost for that down to, $4,500, for instance, or something like that. You're talking about like $55 per month in order to have something in your house, the core of your house, that would be able to cool and heat a substantial space, a significant space, provide you an incredible amount of comfort. I mean, like a lot of people spend that much on their television services. And there are a few things that will make you more comfortable or make you feel as though your home is luxurious. And at the same time, you'll be saving money all along the way. So it's a no-brainer. People are super happy with them. I've been heating my home for many years with a 9,000 BTU heat pump. Andy's been heating his home for a number of years with heat pumps. They work. It's they're really amazing how they operate.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's dive into some of the questions that came in with the registration. We had a question about how do heat pumps work in a 50-year-old house? So I hear that a lot. How do they work in older houses? I think we've kind of skirted on the answer a little bit tonight, but Dana, would you be willing to take the lead on that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, very briefly, as I mentioned, I've been heating my home for a number of years. My house, it's actually from the 1830s, and I've tightened it up. It's not a big house. It definitely isn't a big house, but I've used a single heat pump to displace significant portions of my heating load. If you had a larger home and it hadn't had a whole lot of weatherization upgrades, you'd want to look at additional systems or larger systems in order to accomplish that task. I'm a bit of an outlier in that regard, but and the different heat pump professionals can size it depending on what your existing heating load is and what the condition of your insulation is. They can figure out what the appropriate size is. It's something in the ballpark of 12,000 BTU. I'm sorry, 20,000 BTUs of heating capacity. At your design temperature, whether that's 5 degrees or 0 degrees, for every tank of oil or equivalent that you would generally use. I mean, like, it's important to go through the process of sizing it, but that kind of gives you an idea of the ballpark, the grand scope of how much heat pump is needed. And you really want to land it in that right zone. If you put in too much heat pump, you're going to end up cycling more and not being as efficient over the course of the entire season. So it's a little bit like Goldilocks. You want to, if you have too little heat pump, that's fine. You're going to want some supplemental heat, but most of the year you're going to be totally happy with that, and understand that the extremities of the house further away from the heat pump might be a little cooler. But if you put in many, many heads in a very large piece of equipment, you may not get the same level of efficiency as you would from smaller systems or multiple small condensers.
This one's for you, Scott. It has to do with placement. So the question is, can you explain how a heat pump unit that is installed high on a wall sends heat? Doesn't heat rise? So how does that work?
Yeah, it does. Physics certainly wants heat to rise, but with that little fan inside, it wants to blow it, 7 or 8 feet, down towards the floor. They'll blow, if you put it on high-speed fan, it'll blow 25 feet across the room. So you can blow the heat down to the floor and then let physics take over, so that heat rises. But at the same time, that high wall unit has an inlet on the top that's pulling air in. So you really end up creating a really nice, cycle of air that really you just end up with a temperature that's very consistent from the floor to the ceiling, in a space that has average ceiling heights. Those rooms that have 16 and 18 and 20-foot ceilings, they get a little tricky, but in your average home, the fan's going to blow it to the floor before physics can cause it to rise.
Sense. This question is from Cliff. He's asking if you recommend a backup heat source for very cold outside temperatures. I know that got touched on a little bit in the slides, but I suppose any of you could answer that one.
We'd probably all answer the same way. Cliff is highly knowledgeable on this topic, and it's just a matter of getting a heat pump that's the right size. So you figure out what would be the coldest day you'd ever need to heat, what's the demand of your house at that temperature, and then you just put in a heat pump that puts out that amount of heat. It's the same as any other heating system.
And so do you recommend any sort of backup heat source, or do you think the heat pumps are adequate to cover all of the needs regardless?
It's hard to say. I've been heating with heat pumps here in Maine for 9 years. We haven't found a time when they couldn't keep up. There is at some temperature they can't, but we haven't found it to be an issue.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
We installed backup heat along with our heat pump, and we haven't turned it on yet. So, but we're also pretty well insulated.
Yeah, some people need that security blanket to just feel comfortable that they're going to be covered, and that's fine. I don't discourage people from that at all. You just probably won't use it.
Yeah, at my house, Heather, I have an 1850s farmhouse, obviously with heat pumps in it. And we have a big all-nighter wood stove in the basement from back when the kids were home and we were waxing skis every Friday night for, whether it just be a trip to the mountain or, cross-country ski racing. So we always use the wood stove to heat the iron and, wax some skis. So we still have that. And if my wife and I are home empty nesting, and, we might get down in the basement on the coldest of nights and just light a fire on a Friday afternoon and, kind of play the little game of let's burn some wood all weekend long and stoke it up before we go to bed Sunday night. But then we're up and out on Monday, and, we don't use any other backup heat during the week. A lot of people like, say we put one in your master bedroom, the bedroom's going to be fine, but you also like to sleep between 63 and 65 degrees in the wintertime. But when you go into that master bath at 63 to 65 degrees, it's chilly, so a lot of people like to have a little resistive heat in the bathrooms, like either, floor warming under the tile or just an electric heater in the bathroom. Because it gets expensive to, like you said earlier, do a heat pump in every room. So, we're not putting a lot of heat pumps in bathrooms these days. So something like that but that's really more of a comfort thing. I guess that kind of leads right into, there is a question, I don't know who it's from, but it was asked about, if you put a heat pump in that living space, are you concerned about the baseboard heat freezing if it's left to be unused in the outlying rooms? Yeah, sure, that's always a concern because, we're in Maine and you have water in your pipes, but, like somebody mentioned earlier, I think Dana started off with insulating and air sealing. If your pipes are in the basement is not going to get below freezing unless you have a drafty basement. So insulating the rim joist at a minimum, maybe insulating down just below grade, and just really air seal that basement.
Yeah.
We do have homes where we're putting heat pumps in basements because there are also heat pump water heaters that are taking heat from the basement and creating hot water for showering and hand washing. It's actually cheaper to operate a heat pump in that basement because it's much more efficient at taking or creating heat in the basement than the water heater is at removing it. So, other than the initial investment of putting a heat pump in the basement, that can solve the problem of those freezing pipes as well.
Yeah, you got to, anywhere that you have cobwebs doing this in the basement, you just got to stop that, because that's the stuff, that is the thing that freezes pipes. It's not being in a basement without it. It's the cobwebs that are flipping around because it's freezing cold air pouring in.
Really a good opportunity to give a plug, Andy, for the weatherization rebates
you.
that Efficiency Maine offers.
Yes, we offer rebates up to $3,500 for anyone who wants to hire a registered vendor to insulate and air seal your house. So it's another great investment. Thank you, Heather.
And you can get a lot of bang for your buck from air sealing and very minor weatherization inputs. So there was a question about hot water heaters, and I know we didn't talk a lot about them tonight. So Elizabeth is asking, are hot water heaters powered by heat pumps expensive? It seems like the logical move for my house. So I don't know, Andy, is that one that you want to touch on?
Yes, thanks. The second most popular rebate we have at Efficiency Maine is the heat pump water heater. And unlike the heat pumps that we're talking about so far, where Scott was saying there's an outdoor unit and an indoor unit, heat pump water heaters don't have an outdoor unit. It's just a regular electric water heater with a heat pump on top of it. It looks pretty much like a regular water heater. And they actually cost less than electric water heater after Efficiency Maine discount. We offer a mail-in rebate of $850, or if you're a plumber buying one at a distributor, or you're hiring a plumber to buy one for you, it's an instant discount. There's no paperwork to fill out and there's no wait for a rebate. So it costs less than electric water heater, and they're a super logical way to heat water. If you have an electric water heater, you ought to switch to a heat pump water heater. And you can do that independent of putting in a heat pump. You can do either one first, but they can pay for themselves in a year or two. One of the nice things, people buy heat pump water heaters because they make lots of hot water. We rebated tens of thousands of them. They save about $3,500 over the 10-year life. And what people in Maine like about them is while they're running, they dehumidify your basement. So you can get a gallon of water out of the air in the basement each day, depending on how much you use it and how humid it is. And as Dana taught me years ago, if you have a musty basement, he says, if your basement smells musty, take a shower, because that will trigger the heat pump water heater to dehumidify your basement. So it's a pretty slick side benefit, but very, very popular. We rebated close to 10,000 heat pump water heaters last year in Maine. Mainers making Maine the #1 state in the country for adopting heat pump water heaters.
Take a long shower.
Take a long shower. Okay, thank you. I misquoted you.
So Scott, this one's for you. How high off the ground do you recommend the outdoor units be installed if there is a roof structure above it, but open otherwise?
You want to be 18 inches minimum, sometimes 12 inches, like under a deck where there's not accumulating snow. But really, you just want to be in a place where you don't want snow building up to the bottom of the heat pump, because in a heat pump and heating season, the outdoor unit becomes the evaporator. So it's the part that's dripping water. That water will, build up in a little volcano-shaped pile underneath the heat pump. If that gets to the bottom of the heat pump, it can't drain anymore. You also don't want, snow surrounding the unit. So the higher, the better. I would say at a minimum 12 inches in a space that has a roof over it. But you also don't want to be a slave to shoveling it out. We've all for years kept that path shoveled or snow blown for the oil guy or the propane guy. Don't do that for us and for your heat pump. So 18 is probably the most common height off the ground. The roof over the top is really to protect the heat pump from falling snow or ice or rain off the roof. So that way it doesn't cascade down over the unit and just form a block of ice. So yeah, beware of where you're placing it on the house. If you are placing it on the end of the house where that side of the house, when I look out, there's no snow. It's always grass because the wind blows right through. A 12 or 18-inch stand might be fine there. But if you put it in an inside corner where the wind typically eddies around, you're going to have a big buildup of snow there. So you might want to be 4 feet off the ground in that corner. Pay attention to where your leaves accumulate this fall, because that's where your snow is going to accumulate this winter. And I like to avoid those places with heat pump placement.
That's a good tip.
Well, and I know Scott's, saying, hey, don't worry about the heat pumps, just park it up high enough. But man, I can't, every snowstorm, I just poke my head around the corner to kind of see if it's out of trouble. And, I can give it a scoop or two to just make sure it's clear of snow. I don't have to go out there and detail it, but just kind of paying attention to that will keep you out of trouble.
Yep.
Nice. This question is, can you explain SEER, SEER, and how it can be used as a decision basis? And Dana, I'm actually wondering if this one might be a good one for you.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, SEER stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. And it's a tested rated standard. Higher is better, and it relates to the energy efficiency for air conditioning, for your cooling. Now, in Maine, we do a little bit of cooling, but not nearly as much as other parts of the country. And so it's not nearly as an important of a factor in determining your annual consumption of electricity or operating cost as the heating seasonal performance factor, HSPF, which is used by Efficiency Maine to determine qualifying equipment. So higher SEER is better and will save you money on cooling. But frankly, all the products that qualify for Efficiency Maine that have high HSPF numbers also have very high SEER numbers.
Great. Andy, can you say a little bit more about the registered vendors and the connection to receiving the rebates? So to get the rebates, can a homeowner work with any vendor?
Oh, there's some fine print on the rebates, the $1,200 per home. One of the requirements is the installer has to be a residential registered vendor. That means registered with Efficiency Maine. Now, we don't charge them any money to become a residential registered vendor. We don't pay them any money. We don't set their prices. What we're trying to do is play matchmaker. So what we ask from an installer to become registered is that they are licensed to handle heat pumps, that they are insured to be doing work in your home, that they sign a code of conduct that as to how they will work with homeowners, that they've trained their installers on how to install heat pumps following the manufacturer's directions. And then we list them on our website. I will tell you a little secret. When you do a search with your zip code and you put in heat pumps, for example, we have registered vendors for many different other things like insulation or heat pump water heaters. But if you search under heat pumps, you put in your zip code, you put in a search radius you want to search. If you could search the whole state if you want to, but it's tough to get a service guy to drive 5 or 6 hours. So if you want to get someone fairly close to home, you press search. The default search order is by number of rebates submitted in the last 4 months. We did a customer satisfaction survey years ago so we could rank registered vendors by how pleased their customers were with them. And we found it correlated completely with whoever did the most number of rebates. Well, we know who has the most number of rebates. So the search from the database defaults to sorting by number of rebates in the last 4 months. So no matter where you live in Maine, I'd suggest you search and pick the radius you want and call the top 3. Those are just by definition, those are the ones who have helped the most customers in the last 4 months. So it's a really powerful way to connect homeowners to, I just looked just now, 660 residential registered vendors for heat pumps. There are a lot of them. There are some near you, no matter where you live in Maine. And the vendor locator tool is really easy and powerful way to get in touch with a contractor or installer that will give you a good experience. Does that answer the question, Heather?
Does, thank you. And one of the things that I understand also about the registered vendors is that you make sure that they are familiar with working with specific cold climate heat pumps, because there are some heat pumps that don't work well in Maine. So one of the things that you're doing is making sure that those vendors are familiar with the heat pumps that are most effective here. Is that right?
Yes, Heather, that's part of it. They have to be trained by a manufacturer of Energy Star heat pumps like Mitsubishi. Another way we ensure that happens is there's more fine print, and that's fine print that relates to the heat pump. And as Dana mentioned, the heat pump, regardless of the installer, it also has to be efficient enough to qualify for rebates. So I glossed over the detail, but what you saw, it was $400 to $800 rebates for the first one. Well, it's $400 for an efficient heat pump, and it's $800 for a super duper efficient heat pump. So our rebates are higher for the more efficient the unit is. So it's both helping homeowners find quality installers, but we also have rebate rules that ensure that the heat pump that gets installed will save the maximum amount of money. And as Dana may have mentioned, the ones that are most efficient, I think without exception, are the ones that work best at cold temperatures. So it all works together. So if you, I am, as an Fisher's Maine employee, I'm not eligible to receive rebates. I follow the program rules to the T, because I know, even though I'm not going to get a rebate, we designed the program to help people maximize their savings. So that's why we've got all the eligibility criteria associated with rebates. We want people to have a good experience.
Yeah, I'd like to just toss on top of that, Mitsubishi sells heat pumps all across the entire country, as do a lot of the other manufacturers. And there are products that are brought into the United States that work fantastically well in the Southwest and the South, but are really not designed for our climate. And so, just because you're buying a Maine brand, primary brand, whether it's us or LG or Daikin or Fujitsu, see them sharing the wealth with all the branding. It's just important to make sure that your contractor is selecting a product that's designed to work in sub-zero temperatures. And we try to make that very clear. We have the most extensive line of different configurations that work in this climate, but that's the most important piece. If you just get some heat pump that's going to provide some amount of heating, it's probably going to displace a significant amount of your heating load, but when it gets to seriously cold temperatures, you may be disappointed. And so that's really the key.
This question is from someone who lives in a tiny house, 8 foot by 24 foot, and they are interested in getting a heat pump. They are curious about size and cost as well as placement.
Yeah, so I'll jump on that because I live in what my wife and I call a tiny mansion. It's pretty big for a tiny house, but it's not a tiny house. And you really only need a small single zone for most tiny houses. And if it's even reasonably well insulated, some of the smallest hyperheat heat pumps would be more than adequate to displace your heating load. My house, as I mentioned before, is probably, I don't know, it's in the ballpark of 800 to 1,000 square feet, depending on how you treat the basement. And most of the time, I can displace my entire heating load with a unit that's smaller than 1 ton, a 9,000 BTU unit. I'm going to be upgrading it to just give me a little extra boost, and I'm going to add one to the basement to make sure that my basement temperature is totally set and I'm all heat pumps all the time. And at that point, I will be 100% confident in my displacement. But even that, 2 12,000 BTU units would be way too much for a tiny house.
This one, I think for you, Scott, the question is, how or can one make a heat pump work in an old Cape with small rooms and no open spaces? I bet you get this one a lot.
We do. We have a couple of good approaches that we've used. Obviously, like we said earlier, you don't want to put a heat pump in every room, and oftentimes those rooms are really too small for a heat pump. It's kind of like I was talking about in the beginning, the topic is are heat pumps right for my home? is your home right for heat pumps? So, with a small cape, very small rooms, no open spaces, we would look for a way to maybe do a ducted system. Put in a basement, feed up through the floor with floor grills. Sometimes in those small capes, they have next to nothing for attic space. So, we want to try to avoid doing ductwork in the attic, especially if it's above the insulation. We want to keep it all within the thermal envelope of the home. So maybe we just treat the first floor, and have you do electric heat up in those second floor bedrooms, which are small. Heat from the first floor is going to rise, and you want to sleep a little cooler anyway. It's not going to do anything for you for air conditioning. But yeah, maybe a few nights a week you sleep on the couch. But that's a very general answer to that question. So, get a contractor in and take a look at it, and come up with a good design solution.
Very from house to house a little bit, sounds like. I am noticing the time, and I'm sorry to say that we have come to the end of today's session, even with our additional 15 minutes. So I would like to once again thank you for joining us for the Home and Energy Chats. I hope you learned something helpful this evening. Thank you again to our sponsors, Royal River Heat Pumps, Senecal Construction Services, and Bath Savings. Special thank you to Maggie Perkins and Rain Rayner, who have been managing everything so beautifully behind the scenes. And thank you to our panelists for sharing your expertise with us. We have a special thank you gift that we'll be mailing to each of you, a treat from our favorite local chocolatier, Dean Sweets in Portland, and a complimentary subscription or gift subscription to Green and Healthy Maine magazine. I know you all receive it, so if you want to use that as a gift, we would love that. And if you have any questions that we did not get to today, we will include contact information for our panelists in a follow-up email along with a link to the recording. And as I mentioned earlier, it will be available on our website, greenmainehomes.com, later this week. We have an exciting lineup of programs for the fall season of Home and Energy Chats, including our next episode, October 12th, which is going to be all about using locally sourced wood in your projects. And you will find all the information about that, as well as the rest of our fall programs on our website. And last, you will see a brief survey pop up when we close the webinar. We'd love to hear your feedback on today's session to help us craft future programming that meets your needs. So once again, thank you, everyone. It's been such a pleasure and very, very informative. So I really appreciate everyone joining us this evening.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Rain.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening.
Bye,
Get a
guys.
heat pump.
Hope everyone's well. See you later.
Call Efficiency Maine.